Well, today's the day that Danny's come over with a load of bark chippings. And here he is. He was hiding behind the beans. We've been gassing for about an hour, because that's what we do. But we're going to get all the bark and get it over onto the plot, and that's going to help me get these paths together as I go on in the season. And then I've got something for Danny, which is going to be a bit of a giggle, so stick with us. Right, Danny, we're going to the car.
Let's get it done.
Let's go. Okay, well, I've asked Danny to keep looking this way because I'm going to give him something. Anybody who watches his channel will get this. Anybody who doesn't should pop over to his channel. I think it was not the last video, but the one before, and you'll see what this is about. It's always lovely to receive a gift, and Danny's always very generous, so I've decided that this time I'm going to give him something to take home. There you go, Danny. Because you're a bit indifferent about courgettes.
Yes.
So, well, you can think about what you're going to cook.
God.
I reckon there's a soup in there, maybe a couple of loaves.
Maybe two.
Maybe two soups. Fantastic. Good times. Well, it was great of Danny to bring me that wood chip for my path. And, well, the last pile I had was about that size, and I was amazed how far it went. So I'm hopeful that it will at least fill this path and hopefully return around the corner. And I'm going to dig this. Well, take the turf off the top. You can see there's a real odd slope there, but so that's on my agenda. And I'm thinking rather than transport the top of this soil and turf a great distance, I will use it in here in the same way as I did the other day. So I need to move out all these bars, give it a little bit of a clip and a tidy down here, and then hopefully as I take it off the surface, so it can go in and around this back area. Right, let's get on. Right, well, this metalwork just as well go straight into where it's going to live, which is around these purple sprouting broccoli that will need the support. Get that weed out. They'll need the support during the windier winter months, so I'm going to get those in now, and that'll help clear the area up. And I don't really need to get these tied into these bars until they get a couple of feet high, but I know where they are and they'll be ready for that windy period. Right, I think I've got one more to go. There we are, face this one in. Sorted. Right, time to attack this. I've had a couple of inquiries about this tool, which is a Chillington hoe. It's a fine piece of kit, and that wide blade makes it really good for removing the top surface of anything, really. So, onward. Oop. In we go with this. Unfortunately, the barrow fits in. All right, see if I can drag that across. Well, it wasn't cold when I came out, but it's amazing. As soon as I start this job, the sun comes out and it really warms up. All right, get that dock leaf root out. And I can just, this doesn't go very far, a whole barrow just sort of fills this area. I just get it reasonably flat. And this won't be the whole solution. I will need to cover this with some membrane, but it raises it. It gives me a decent walking area around these that I can keep a handle on all this hedge growth. Right, well, that went in really well. I've got to get on with the next bit now. But I'm going to have a bit of a natural break, do something else. It's nice to do a variation of things. Right, well, I've done half this tree, I think probably half, in terms of taking the plums off, and it was very successful. So these plums are allegedly Victoria plums. That's the tree label when I bought it. But I've got to say, they're very small, and that might be just because of the growing conditions and the weather we've had, or it might be that it's not a Victoria plum at all. What I did find is that if I found a plum that was really very ripe, when I cut it to get the stone out, it had a sort of crumbly black residue in and around the stone, which rendered the plum not really very usable. So when they were really soft and sweet, they were actually a bit of a worry. I didn't fancy cooking with them or eating them. So I tended to use all the ones that were a bit firmer. They were perfectly good inside. And I sliced them all into two, took out the stone and then stewed them. And it made a very big saucepan full of stewed plum, which will be delicious during the winter months. And when I tasted it, it wasn't sweet, but, well, I'm diabetic, so I used some sweetener and just basically sweetened it to taste. And what we found was that it didn't take too much of that sweetener to bring it up to an acceptable sweetness. And I'm not used to very sweet things for obvious reasons, but I found that the sweetness with a bit of sweetener was perfect. So we put that in the freezer, and it basically prompted me to get on and do the rest of this tree. So I notice there's a few more plums falling now. It's definitely the time. So I'm going to get on and, well, harvest what I can. Well, not quite as many as my last haul. Picked up an egg on the way, but a good amount. So yeah, I'm pleased with that. And you might have watched one of my previous videos and seen me put all my green tomatoes into this bucket with the idea that they will ripen. And I put these in the shed, just in the window, and thankfully there's a whole load that have ripened straight away. So if you've got green tomatoes and you're clearing out your plants and you don't want it for green tomato chutney, which I know a lot of people like, but we don't, then this is a good way of just ripening off all those that look like they're on their way or will take a while. And well, there'll be a good couple of pounds of ripe tomatoes in here. And the other benefit of removing them like this is that it just exposes more of the green tomatoes to the sun, and we end up with even more ripe tomatoes. So this is a way of prolonging your harvest if you've got lots of extras. Right, yeah, it's looking good. One or two more and we'll be done. There's one or two there that are sort of an orangey colour. I'll leave them, they'll soon ripen up. There we go. Good times. Well, I'm actually looking forward to this bit because it's tapering, so it gets thinner and easier, and it'll enable me to do a little bit more of that levelling behind these two beds, and then that will be a whole section and I'll be able to work at that. I can do that other section later on, and I've got a section along by the polytunnel to do. But it'll take me on to the next stage with this section of path, which will be having got the top off of it, is just spend some quality time chipping away, getting some sort of level all the way down, so that when I put the membrane on, I haven't got this going on. Because even though you put chippings on top and it takes out some of the dips and high points, you can certainly feel it after a while once the wood chip breaks down. So it's worth doing and quite easy when it's bare like this. Right, enough chitter chatter. Get on and do the bit that requires a bit of effort. Right, my friend, here we go. That'll do nicely. So, one full path, end to end, and that will be a great step forward to minimising the workload that I have going forward. So, I think I'm going to put the spoil, which is there, into this area. I think probably down that side. There's a little bit more needed down there, but I think it could cover both. And then this will be ready for levelling out, and that'll be another day, I think. Right, let's get that spoil in behind these beds. This isn't going to go in as easily because there's not as much space. If I dump it here, I can spread it out. I'm going to move my net out of the way. I don't want to bury it. I already put some membrane down here some years ago, but not fully, and it sort of works okay. And hopefully if I put this on top and then another layer of membrane, I should hopefully have cracked it, at least keep it at bay for some months. Right, I'm going to get on and get this spread out. Well, you can probably get some sort of idea of what this is going to look like now when it's fully covered with membrane and chippings. It feels good. Feels like this will be a really manageable work area, and yeah, I'll look forward to gardening in it. I know that because all the focus and all the concentration goes on what I'm doing in the beds, and I can do more in the beds than I currently do, just maintaining, weeding, and just generally looking after it. Right, I'm gonna harvest a couple of bits of broccoli because they're coming on, and then I'll go from there. Right, now this broccoli goes from very edible to gone over in breakneck speed. Let me show you. I'm going to crop this one and we will eat it, but you'll be able to see it's already starting to go to flower, which is incredible. So I'm going to take one or two that I sort of think are actually underdone, but I want to make sure that we get the best part of it. So I think there's another one of those in here. Yep. And this one's just at that stage where if I leave it another day, it won't be good to eat. So we'll get those into the cooker and have a nice meal. Right, put this net down and move on. Whilst Danny was here, I did a quick tour of the plot for his channel, and I described this pear tree as the jewel in the crown, and it really is. Just look at these pears. In the last few days, we've got some colour on them. I noticed there's one that's fallen. Didn't look like it was going to come to a lot, but just look at the size of them. They're amazing. I'm going to have such a huge pear harvest this year. I'm definitely going to be sharing some of these, but it is a beautiful tree, and I've spent quite a lot of time shaping it each year. And you can look at it now and see what are called the water shoots, which is basically all those very tall growths at the top, and I will take those out in the interest of keeping the shape of the tree. And I want to keep that dome shape, so any of the leading branches that are beginning to flay out a bit too far, I'll be pruning those. But I did so last year, and you can see it's not had any real detrimental effect on the tree. And keeping it that nice sort of drooping dome shape is my aim. Fantastic tree. Right, let's go and have a look in the polytunnel. I stripped the polytunnel out. If you've watched my earlier videos, feels great coming in here. And I kept these romas because they were still ripening, and sure enough, look at those. They've come on really nicely. So, and I can see yellowing starting on these, so they will ripen as well. I keep these watered. I noticed a branch fell off the other day, probably as a result of me doing all the moving. And I do need to keep my carrots watered so that they keep going nicely. But they're looking good. Right, bit of watering for those, I think. See, having recently harvested beans, that I need to do it again. Not going to do it today because I've got plenty of prep already on my plate. And that little basket there, or trug of produce, is coming home with me now. And I think I said before, this time of year, you seldom get away from the plot without a whole load of great produce to take home. Well, that's me done for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. And if you did, why not like and subscribe? You can get my videos every Wednesday and every Sunday at 8 PM. And if you want notifications, click on the bell and you won't miss anything. Hope you've had a good week. Good times.